I've always been a big fan of witty commercials. I'm not quite yet the person that watches the Super Bowl just for the commercials, but I am getting there. And one of my favorite, especially ones that make fun of the business world, one of my favorite commercials is group getting together in the meeting room, and everybody's got their coffee and their binder and their file folders, and everyone rushes in and sits down, and one person says, "Did you call this meeting?" And the person shakes their head, and the guy points at someone else. "Did you call this meeting?" That person shakes their head, and the second person asks the guy who's been asking everyone else, "Did you call this meeting?" "No." "Did anybody here call this meeting?" Silence. "All right, we're done then." Everybody gets up and leaves. I thought that was a fitting introduction to Valuability Podcast episode 19. It's a meeting, not a circus. How to run effective meetings. The Valuability Podcast is for financial advisors, business owners, and anyone interested in financial planning, business, leadership, and personal development. We believe that financial success comes from building a plan on the foundation of your values, and building your ability will help you get there. My name is Danforth Fleek. I was a financial advisor and product wholesaler in the financial services industry for over 20 years. I'm joined each week by my co-host, longtime friend and mentor, Philip Simonson. Philip has been in financial services for over 4 decades, also as a financial advisor, a field leader, sales trainer, and was a senior manager covering areas such as advisor development and field operations. So, Philip, I know your middle son, Garrett, has been talking for a while about leaving the little big city of Minneapolis and moving up north. What is, and I know he's also one of our consistent listeners, what is the update on that process?
They moved up.
They have moved.
They moved up last Wednesday. They're renting their house.
Oh, awesome.
Up here. And as I texted him this morning, did the close on his house down in the cities go through? He says their checkbook, is much larger this morning. So
excellent.
So good news to him, and it's great having our son and daughter-in-law and grandson live close by.
Yeah, most importantly, the grandchild.
Most importantly, the grandchild.
So that's my next question. This is your first grandchild. Humankind, you have grand dogs, but this is your first human grandchild. What key learnings so far have you found being a grandparent?
You know, it's I'm just so grateful to have the opportunity. When I was born and raised, I never had a grandfather, so I want to cherish this, and to have this opportunity is phenomenal. And I do know words have purposes, although it doesn't matter so much right now. But I will, got to be mindful. They are going to watch everything I say. But in the meantime, I'm down on my hands and knees. I'm playing with Ollie, and just adoring him, and can't give the child enough love.
Excellent. Now I haven't met him yet. That's going to be fun to get to meet him. Hopefully sometime soon.
I hope so as well. You will like it. Yeah.
So, and then we need to start grooming him to join the hunting party in, say, 13 or 14 years.
Exactly. Once he gets that permit, firearms permit and gun safety, maybe he'll take to it. We'll see. We'll at least give him that offering. It's more for us, as you know, and as we talked last 2 times ago. I think it's more just about the getting the family together, and we have a lot of laughs. And it's about the social aspect. It's not so much the hunting.
Absolutely. You can find the Valuability Podcast wherever you find your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, or you can find us on our YouTube channel. Search Value-Ability on YouTube to find us there. Also, you can find us on our website, value-ability.com. Click on the Episodes tab, and we have our episode player right there. Wherever you find us, please like, review, subscribe, and share. Again, at this point, sharing is absolutely the best thing you can do for us if you are a consistent listener. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at value_ability. Twitter is the best way to get in touch with us if you have questions, comments, or topics that you would like us to cover. And Instagram is where we post visuals. If you're on the go and can't get to our website, we post all of the visuals, if we use any, on our Instagram account. We also post links to everything on Facebook. Search at Valuability, all one word, on Facebook. So, Philip, I know you taught me very early on how to run effective meetings, so it has been a part of what you've done for a long time.
Yes, and that will be our subject today. And as we were talking earlier, what have been some memorable meetings? I think we asked our listeners to write in. I'll never forget one. I was out in New York. Circus at the training center of MetLife. I was hired out as a consultant, and they were going to start this financial planning workshop, and they wanted me to come out and listen to the couple presenters who, consultants they were going to have present, because I had a good friend who was running this financial planning department for him. And I did, and I heard their presentations. I said, well, there's some gaps. And he said, well, what would you do? And I gave him my proposal. I said, you're hired, but we're also going to use this other gentleman. And he's not gonna. We're gonna set up this train-the-trainer session where you'll train on your pieces of the financial planning process, and that was going to be the case analysis, solution presentation, client review. He said we're going to have this other person teaches initial interview. I said, okay, great, sounds good. And Doug C. Doug C. was doing the training. Now, Doug has written training programs. He's been hired out, and he was hired out by this other presenter, on this initial interview to set up this train-the-trainer. He's done it for Michael Gerber, the E-Myth theory. He was the president of Tony Robbins, not the one who stole the money. Doug is just, he kicked off the meeting. It was the second day. And he said, do any of you have any squids on your face? And he said, a squid is like, it's got 8 tentacles, and it's just covering your face, and you need to get it off before you can provide 100% focus and intention to our objectives today. So does anyone have one? I thought, well, that's kind of cool. Squid, I'll never forget that. I'll put that in that arrow in the quiver. But I said, yeah, I do. And he says, well, what is it, Philip? I said, I don't know if you're manipulating me. You're that good. And he said, that's a great question. And or statement. He said, now what I'm going to tell you is, can I play with your mind? Neuro-linguistic programming, B.F. Skinner, he was excellent at, the behavioral psychology. He said, what I will tell you is words have purpose. So you have to be careful what you say. And also, at the end of the day, you've got to, the best way to market yourself is market your morals. So yes, could I be manipulating? Absolutely. However, if I am a person of value and integrity, no, I am not. But that squid comment, that's going to be that would be one of my tips to you before you start your meeting. Ask any of the people in the meeting, do you have any squids? And what are those squids? And before we start going through this agenda, let's get them off your face. And if I can answer them right now, I will. If not, we're going to create this parking lot. And the parking lot is just like for many of you, you drive into the office or you have a car. And sometimes, if you're in a bigger city, maybe you do mass transit. But, you've got a car. And if you take it to the grocery store, if you take it to your office, you got to park it. Well, just like this parking lot on the flip chart, and you label it parking lot, I'm going to put down that item. I'm going to write it down so then they can see you writing it down, the participants in this meeting, so then they know you're taking it seriously. And we'll come back to it, just like you have to go back to your car at the end of the day and get into it. At the end of the meeting, we'll leave 5 minutes and we'll go through the parking lot items. Because what the next tip, and then we're going to, if I can answer it, I will. If not, we'll sign it to someone and we'll put a due date on it. So then that way, at least the people have been heard and they can come back and they can refocus.
I love that concept of the squid. I had forgotten about using that terminology, but it's just so visceral. Like, people just immediately understand the concept of having a squid on your face. Like, it's just so impactful. And yeah, it's true. You get into meetings and you can tell people are disconnected for one reason or another. One quick question there. What, obviously, sometimes the squid isn't necessarily business related. What if somebody has a kind of a personal squid? Is that a time where you might excuse them from the meeting if it's something, beyond the business realm where it's going to keep them from focusing? Or how would you approach that?
Yeah, that's a great question. If they share it and it's a personal, then and they're comfortable sharing it, you have to take a read on it and just and use good judgment. Look, if you can't stay focused, I'm just going to ask you, can you stay present with this personal item, or is it to such a point in extreme that maybe it's best that you excuse yourself from the meeting here today and maybe work and just go get this thing handled? Because if it's dealing with their family and someone went in the hospital and it's immediate family, this isn't the place to be.
Right.
Let's put your family first. But I'm going to ask them. Absolutely, Dan. And if they say, no, I can stay focused, I can stay present, all right, let's march on.
Good. Yeah, from a personal standpoint, I've had situations where, especially when I was taking care of my mother, where I had things like that. And I will tell you from my standpoint, to this day, I am intensely loyal to the person who was my leader because of his sympathy and openness to allowing me to worry in a business setting about those things at times where he did just that, where he would just say, hey, look, you obviously can't be focused right now. Go take care of it. Just huge buy-in from me. And like I said, to this day, I'm extremely loyal to him as a person. Just it creates such a huge amount of trust.
Right. And since we're on that, and a lot of what I teach here lately has been the soft side of leadership, and it's leadership skills. And what I can share with the audience here today is leadership without compassion equals tyranny. So your compassion, or your leader's compassion, getting to know your people and empathizing with them, and being there for them in their dire moments of need, that's going to create your best source of power. That's called reverent loyalty, and we'll talk more on that afterwards. But I think it's worthy of doing a little sidetrack and covering that point. Now, going back, meetings can be a circus, and what I would like everyone to figure out, if you're the one responsible for conducting the meeting and facilitating the meeting, I'm going to give you some tips here today. But one of the first things that I want you to consider in running these meetings, they can be very costly. So one of the questions I would ask participants in a meeting, how many minutes have we wasted or used ineffectively in this meeting or on this agenda item? Then go to the flip chart, or just, if you're doing Zoom today, and we're going to talk about different facilitation techniques and, in person and Zoom, etc. But write down what the people say. So if one says 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10, 20, 15, well, if you do the math, that equals 60 minutes. Well, of wasted time. And the meeting, I like, one of my rules of thumbs with meetings too is the mind can only absorb what the bum can endure. And that's about 60 minutes. So make sure if your meeting is going to go longer, that you take a break at that time. So what we would, but then the next thing, determine the cost of running an hour meeting. Well, add up all the salaries of the participants. So if someone, has 250, another one has 100, 70, 60, 40, that adds up to 520,000. Well, divide that by 2,000 working hours. Well, that's $260 that for that 1 hour meeting. That's what it costs. So if you wasted 60 minutes in that aforementioned example on a particular subject matter that wasn't relevant, there's a price to be paid. And as we've always said, running a practice or a business, it comes down to managing three things: managing net income, managing processes, and managing people. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the processes and people and how to run effective meetings here today. So that's I'm going to do a little bit right now on tips and techniques. We talked about the squid already. My second one here, and we talked about the parking lot. Have that ready. Dan referenced another point that I want to build on, and it's what I call the 3 bucket theory. And I tell my people, and this is all part of my behavioral norms, meeting norms, you can call them. And I would list out these meeting norms right at the beginning and say, no, for us to run effective meetings, here's some meeting norms I just want to review with you. And one is, here's the parking lot, and I explain the parking lot. 2, we are going to talk about the 3 buckets. The 3 buckets are, bucket 1 are those things that you can control. Bucket 2 are those things that you can influence. And bucket 3 are things that you have neither control nor influence over. In this meeting today, we want to stay focused on bucket 1 item. So before you start, stop to think about what you need to be thinking about. Is, before you raise a question or bring up an issue or something, is this a bucket 1 item? To help them figure out if it's a bucket 1 item, I would, we had Dan, you remember this, as a ground rule, you will not conduct meetings unless that meeting has an agenda and what we used to call the 3 Ps. And the 3 Ps is it's got to have a purpose. What's the objective of the meeting? Then what's the process? These are the steps that we're going to take during this meeting to achieve that objective. And then here's going to be the payoff, the benefit to the organization, to our end clients, and we would have that as a best practice as much as possible, particularly Zoom and more today with people conducting business through the web. Um, Send the meeting agenda out ahead of time, and look, here's with a little note, I've attached the meeting. Please look it over. Is there anything I missed? Secondly, is there here's the decision points that we're going to be making. List them out. So come prepared to discuss, and then we'll make a decision. Now, and Dan, I'm certainly recall this. We had when it came to decision making. Some decision makings, it's going to always be the leader. It's a republic, some it's going to be a democracy, and we might go on and use consensus decision making. We'll run a whole different podcast on decision making techniques and best practices or models. But what we used to use was it was a consensus model, and we'd use remember the red, green, yellow. And if it, let's think of it as a stoplight. If you can visualize that stoplight, green is I can be 70% in agreement, 100% support, and that's a green. Yellow is I can be 70% agreement, 100% support, but I need a clarifying question answered for me, or I need I have this thought, and tell me if it's if I'm thinking correctly here. And that's really clarifying thought, and maybe it's not a question. But and the red is, no, I'm opposed, but you can't be red just to stop the process. You've got to at least have a solution. So it's, are you playing here to win versus playing to lose? So the other benefit of doing that consensus on the decision making, for we in social styles in one of our other episodes, those those expressives and those drivers, they can dominate a meeting, and particularly if you don't have a good facilitator. And I'll give you some tips on how to handle that here in a minute or two. But it allows that consensus red, green, yellow allows those who are more introverted to have a voice, and they won't feel as dominated, and they get the sense of that they got buy-in to and then they'll take better ownership. Dan, anything from trigger anything for you there, or any thoughts or questions before I give some other tips?
Yeah, quick question. Do you like having time frames on your agenda? Is that something that you like to do?
I certainly have in the past, and they're estimated time frames. So,
right.
And if you do use that, just say, okay, in asking the people, did I get our time frames correct here? Does everyone agree with them? And you will get some people, Dan, who are going to try to sidetrack you. They're going to have different issues. They're going to have hidden agendas. That's just normal. That's just office politics, etc. So when those things come up, or particularly if someone loves to hear themselves talk, and I should be raising my hand right now if everyone could see it.
Me as well.
Right? And I could be accused of overselling my ideas, and I have been. So it's an area of growth. So that's why they taught me this this consensus decision making, because it allows other people to buy in. But they also taught me from a facilitation standpoint, and part of my behavioral norms around meetings is people could yell out "Geppo," and Geppo just meant good enough, press on. That usually, and it allows people to put their colleagues in check as well. Okay, I got it. Yep. So Geppo. So that's a way to help manage and bring people back and put them back on track. Then another technique that I would use too, just at the very beginning of your meeting, besides going through these meeting norms, it's important that you review the agenda. Just review it once again. Say, okay, will this achieve our objectives here today, or is there anything anyone wants to add? Or is anything off the plate because someone isn't ready to cover that? That way, boy, I what I want to do is that gets me buy-in with the people, so they're all focused then on the meeting that's going to just about ready to start.
Yeah, I have been a part of an organization that not only had specific times on agendas, but also used a timer in the meeting room, and I'm about 50-50 on that. It can work, especially if you have a situation in that role. The meetings that we attended were often a bunch of salespeople who were out in the field, and we were brought together relatively infrequently, so we had a limited amount of time, and those meetings could skew off, and so they didn't use it as if it's used as just an absolute autocratic, this is the amount of time and there's no, we're just going to move on. I find it at times counterproductive, but it is nice to have it as a guide. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And the other thing that came to mind, I read articles recently about there's a trend within some tech companies to have the first 10 to 15 minutes of a meeting be simply everybody in the meeting reviewing a memo that is written by essentially like the main presenter of the meeting. And so the reasoning behind it is that people come to meetings in various states of preparedness, and so they build into the meeting the 10 to 15 minutes to review the memo and information. They also send it out beforehand, but everybody sits and reviews the memo, so it's 100% clear and in their minds and fresh, and it's the most current information as well if there are any updates to it. I thought that was very interesting. I don't know if I would adopt that. I think there are a couple companies that have adopted as kind of universal practice, but I think it's definitely an interesting concept. I don't know if you've seen that or had experience with something like that.
I'm going to take your first subject with the timer, and then the second. Let's deal with that. Now, part of it, and I'll just do my shameless plug right now. If any of you want, we have content. If you just want to purchase the content, how to run effective meetings, from sample agendas to these behavioral meeting norm examples to facilitation skills of decision making, different decision making methods. So if you want that, Dan will tell you later how to reach out. But just note, these are skills that have to be learned around facilitation and in how to run an effective meeting. So if the timer if you go with the timer and you're running off, and it's, you got to, as a facilitator, hey, this is great conversation right now. It's deep, it's meaningful. I would at times then say, all right, look, we're going to go over here. This is a very, very good conversation, but I just want to ask the group right now, does everyone like to just extend this meeting? I mean, this subject matter for another 3 to 5 minutes, and note it might have a knock-on effect on another item that we're going to cover. And I want to get the consensus. So show of hand, how many people are 70% agreement, 100% support? And I want to show of hands. And if I got that, boom, then I know I've covered that, and I can stay with it. And by the way, 100% support means this. You have had a chance to say if you're opposed or if you needed any clarifying questions. And so you have your opportunity to speak and have your voice heard. What it does not mean is that you will not go leave this meeting and then around the hallway management, around that water fountain, or I really didn't agree with that decision. No, time out. You're undermining the process. That is not what 100% support means. Look, even if I disagree, because you're never going to get 100% agreement with if you have more than 2 people. But I will support it. So you got to let people know what that means. Now, in regard to having everyone, if it's a really crucial subject matter, I of the mindset. Look, I need you to read this before coming to the meeting. And that's why I'm sending the agenda out 48 hours in advance so you have time. And, we need to make decisions in this memo, and I highlight what they are so then people will, know the importance of reading it. And
Sure.
As a facilitator here too, and sometimes even I'm the leader, I can tell if they haven't read it, and you know what, I'll call them out because I'm not going to let them, that's behavior. It's not going to be acceptable. So going forward, they're going to, know the importance, because what I'm not going to do is reward the wrong behavior here, because the rest of the people are saying it's okay not to read it, but you can still come in here and try to take control of the meeting. Not acceptable.
Yeah, I thought it was an approach that, like you mentioned, when you're adding up the value of the time of the people involved, that for high-end meetings where you're getting a lot of important people together, especially if you're a mid-level person in an organization, I kind of liked that idea of having 5 to 10 minutes blocked out to have them read that and be totally present for processing that information. But having it as kind of a universal approach, I think, might get a little bit in the way of things when you're having just kind of run-of-the-mill meetings where there's not heavy decision-making content to that meeting. So yeah, it was just something that occurred to me because I had read that a month or so back. So I wanted to bring up that concept.
Good. Was I clear on my viewpoint?
Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, I agree with the timer. Like I said, for situations where it's a super time crunch, we used to do fly in, fly out meetings where people would, I'd fly down to Cincinnati and get in at 7:00 and be on a 6 p.m. flight back to Minneapolis. And, when it's those kind of super time frame oriented meetings, having a timer does help quite a bit keep things on track. But like you said, if you're having good discussion, you gotta kind of take a temperature of the room of, does this make sense, and understand that you're going to lose something on the back end.
Yeah, and you reminded me, and I'm digressing here, but the fly in, fly out, that's what we used to call seagull management. And seagull management is fly in, eat your food on you, and fly out. All right, not add any value. So you're going to add value, and that's one of our guiding. My top 5 values have create meaningful work, meaningful relationships. So again, having structure around the meetings, making sure these 3 Ps, having these behavioral norms, you're gonna start teaching people how to think and how to run, and giving them the different skills and how to run effective meetings. And while I'm up there, facilitating, I need to make sure I'm modeling the right behavior. And so I'm going to just go back to a couple other meeting norms that I just was standard. And I used to run these, Dan, every year for ING Advisors Network. We had 8 broker dealers. We brought it down to 4. So I would, the business planning meetings and strategic planning meetings, they would ask me, where you would have the COOs of the companies, the presidents of the companies in there, the head of their marketings of the company in there, head of sales in there. There's some high-powered people, high-powered salaries. We would start off with these norms, and they'd ask me to facilitate. And I was very honored. They actually then Valerie said, "Hey, can I have those meeting norms? I want the overall president over in the Dutch ING International Netherlands Group. They wanted to have these meeting norms. So they are impactful and they do work. And the other one we had is, look, stay present, and that means one meeting at a time. And then open minds, open doors. And lastly, we would do this: seek to understand before being understood. What that means is no mental judo games going on. That's, you know what, I'm not really listening to you because I'm figuring, I'm my self-talk, the 6 inches between the ears. I'm already countering how I'm going to respond to you, particularly if there's heated subjects. No, I should be willing to listen to you to the point where at the end of what you say, I can paraphrase, Dan, here's what I think I heard you say. And you list those items out and you say, yes, you've heard me. Now Dan can relax because he felt he's been heard. And then even if we do disagree, and that's, the last one I'll bring up, disagreement does not mean disrespect. We had the CEO of ING Advisors Network, we had Miles there for a while, then it was John. John loved to learn, you just could figure it out, by having counterpunch. And it would challenge our critical thinking skills. And it was very good. We had to be sharp. So everyone's got different learning styles, etc. But we, with John, disagreement did not mean disrespect. So that's those are some of the norms I'd give you there. Now, another tip that I would do in our meeting agendas, and if you're doing Zoom, just put it up at the very beginning so everyone can see it. Or if it's in person, you have the agenda ahead of time. Even though you sent it out, make sure you have it printed. Everyone has one in front of them when they sit down. We would have our vision. You might remember this, Dan. We had, every Monday morning as a team, we would go through our team meeting, and we'd have our vision statement there, our guiding principles along the side. And we'd some of the meeting norms would be there, and we'd highlight those around the guiding principles. And the reason for that, and by having the vision, etc., when you do make decisions, you can reference the vision. So it's very helpful, and I just wanted to give people that technique.
Yeah, some of those meeting norms we actually had built into our guiding principles.
Correct.
Disagreement
does not mean disrespect. Meetings must start on time, end on time.
Yeah, 70% agreement, yep. 100% support. Those things were actually built into our overall guiding principles, and we did review them. 2 things within a meeting, 2 roles within a meeting could comment on quickly: the role of having a facilitator and then the role of having a notes taker.
Yeah, so those are 2 very good points that we should be talking about, so thank you. The facilitator, now I've always, be careful on this one. I was hired out oftentimes to be the facilitator, because if you're the president, CEO, this is when I was doing when consulting, and I'm doing, and asked to come in to do a business planning session, etc. It's hard to wear both hats, the leader hat and being a facilitator. So if it's a big meeting, powerful meeting, a lot of money going to be tied up in people, in regard to, people's salaries and what that meeting is costing per hour, it's probably good to have a facilitator so the leader can stay focused and just, not have to worry about keeping the meeting on track, etc.
No, and that could be somebody internal to the company, but
yes.
maybe not in that department even. You wouldn't have to necessarily hire a consultant, but you also could go out and hire a freelance.
You certainly could. Like ING Advisors Network, they would just bring me in. I sat on the operating committee, but my role was to be the facilitator at that time, even though I was also running the business development a piece for the operation. We had 8,000 advisors back then. So you're right. Now here's the other point. And Dan, you probably recall this, maybe not, but in our Monday morning meetings, we would facilitation, we would pass it around. Who's going to be the facilitator this meeting? Who's going to take the notes this meeting? So it isn't always one person. Give everyone a chance to participate and develop those skills. So I think that's, I'm glad you brought that one up. Now, other facilitation techniques, let's just segue right into it. Set the standards right at the very beginning. You're going to express the standards for the group to use in its processes, and it could be around decision making. For example, should we use consensus as our decision making method here today? Now, remember, or you could say a reminder to the group, we agreed to define our decision criteria before discussing solutions. Or gatekeeping, that's another technique. Encourage and make sure you can you encourage and facilitate the participation of all members. Don't let some people just dominate your expressives. Enable that quieter member to contribute. And you could do that. Say, I haven't heard from Sally here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Sally.
Now, I'll jump in with a quick anecdote. One of my firms, it was a big corporation, a new president had come in, and he had called a meeting. It was kind of one of these big round table meetings with 2 people from every department. So you had 2 people from marketing, 2 people from compliance, 2 people from sales, 2 people from training, which is the department I was in. So it was me and my boss, and we're going through the meeting, and this one person was talking about something, and I happened to turn and look at my boss, and I kind of shot her this kind of, I didn't roll my eyes, but it was a rolling eyes look. And to his credit, the new president caught that, and in the middle of this person's speaking, he stopped them, looked at me, pointed at me, and he said, "Why did you give her that look?" and asked me what I was thinking, and it definitely took me aback. I'd never had somebody do that to me, and being myself, I spoke my mind. I thought that the person was kind of grandstanding. I said it in a somewhat political way, but super effective. The other thing that did was that next time I was in a meeting with him, I was a little bit more careful about the looks I was shooting people, or what look I had on my face.
Well, as was everyone else in the meeting, because that stuff travels quickly.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah, I didn't mind it, actually. It was kind of, for lack of a better term, the person was BSing, and it really didn't have all that much impact on what we were talking about. So it kind of wrapped that leg of the conversation up rather quickly.
Yeah, and that's where, I call some of those people the grandstanders, or they're jumpers. They jump from one subject to the next, and moves the meeting forward before appropriate discussion can conclude or any decisions are made. So you got to bring the group back to the planned agenda and state when the person's issues will be discussed, if it is relevant, and that's the facilitation skills to grab that. Or it's keeping the group on task. Is I think we're getting a little off track here. I would say when I was facilitating, we're limited on time, so I'd like to suggest that we come back to the schedule. Or again, if you teach people the behavioral norms of a meeting, hey, someone will say, "Hey, that's a gepo," and it'll be a peer putting a peer in check. And that's always a good thing.
Yeah, that's the thing that you find with these norms, is that once the team gets them built in, it's the same thing that we've talked about with the mastery conversation that we've had. It's essentially a language for your team to incorporate and to use to be more efficient.
Well, certainly. And it brings, as the leader, the hardest thing that we have to do is teach people how to think. So, and how to make decisions. So, you even So staying focused, as on words have purpose, and people are observing you up there, you've got to be on your game. And you're going to have people who, like we said, another facilitation technique, gatekeeping. Someone who, is dominating the individual. They want to control the participation, so what you can do there with those people, is you can redirect the conversation to another person for their view. And it might just be saying, hey, we haven't heard from, Sally yet, like I mentioned. Or, being polite, but firm. Nancy, we value your thoughts, but we must also allow others to contribute as well. So that's still complimenting that person, but nipping them in the bud so they, politely, so that they don't in the future. Hey, okay, I get it. I see what the facilitator's doing here. Now, technique. There's can be abusers, critical of others publicly. Boy, the offset of this, or the negative offset of this, or byproduct of this type of behavior, it reduces creativity. So you got to channel those critical comments and remind them of the common goal and the desire to get diverse ideas and inputs. So if someone's saying, I'm going to poo-poo that idea, whoa, time out. We're not at that stage. We're still at, figuring out, the creativity stage here. We're still kind of brainstorming. If it was one of those such, that's not very helpful, that comment. And you just point blank need to call those people out. They need to know if someone is in control up front, and they will respect that. Now, Harvey, you've heard me mention him many times. He used to love in these meetings, look, now, do you want it with the bark on or bark off?
Right.
And I always do love that comment. And, there was a meeting where all of a sudden someone, it was PowerPoints a lot back in those days. And we got schooled on PowerPoints. And it was one of the, the MBA classes. I wasn't an MBA, but we were inviting them in to their first meeting, first day of orientation, etc. And, Harvey came in to meet with them, and someone was going through, they were supposed to be doing a presentation. PowerPoint's up there. It's got, got the bullet points. It's got weight and a lot of words behind the bullet points. And Harvey just said, time out. Let me just give you a little lesson here. All you're doing is regurgitating what's up there on the PowerPoint. You're wasting my time. I could have read this. Just right. Send it to me. For all of you going forward, look, the rule of thumb in this company is if you're using PowerPoints, no more than 6 bullet points to a page, and no more than 6 words to a bullet point. I expect you, if you're a master of this subject, even if you're not a master, but give us what we need to read, read or in between the lines to help us figure this thing out. Otherwise, we don't need this meeting. Just send it to us and let us read it, and let us provide you the feedback.
Yeah, obviously, PowerPoints can be effective, but I tend to lean towards, if you're in a presentation mode. So as an example, when I did seminars for my financial advisor clients to their customers, they can be very effective, but within meetings, the agenda is the thing that I always think should be running that. So, you have the agenda up on the screen and follow that, but using a PowerPoint in a meeting like that, I've always seen it much more as a crutch than anything. Like, it's when you're in that group, it's not like having a pretty picture or an animation is going to really add anything to the conversation. It can, like I said, be your guide for a certain part of the meeting, but having the entire thing built to, I go back to my own experience where, again, these 8-hour days where, as you call it, the seagull fly in, fly out, where, they're, what portion of the, send your portion of the deck in, and you have this, 120 slide deck that ends up being built, and it really becomes more of a weight than anything, whereas a good, solid agenda with, the good outline, the good norms, and having this common language and this common understanding is a much better approach in my mind than relying on a PowerPoint presentation.
Agreed. So last 2 points, and I'll turn it over to you, Dan, in the article, and anything else you want to add. And I'll before I summarize, the other thing I want you to do is do a meeting satisfaction check. And at the end of the meeting, it's some questions you could just ask. How do you feel about how others are listening to group members? How do you feel about the exchange of ideas in group discussion?
Do you do that as a survey, or you do it actually live?
Live.
Okay.
And just do it, or if you were rating this meeting, I love this one. From 1 to 10, 1 is very dissatisfied to 10 extremely satisfied. What score or numerical score would you provide it? So I'd look at it and say, okay, Brad, what do you give it? Brad's, I'll give it a 7. All right, Brad, to move it to an 8 next time, or a 9. What will it take? And just keep going around the room.
I really like that as well.
Right. So then, then the, you at the conclusion of the meeting, all right, you got to summarize. So, all right, what did we agree upon here today? And, this is someone, so someone who's taken the notes now, and the note taker would get them, within, we'd have a guiding principle within 24 hours, we'd have a summary of the meeting and decisions made, etc. But let's just go around. Let's summarize. What did we talk about? What did we agree upon? What decisions were made? And ask someone to summarize it. And then ask is there anything we missed?
For recurring meetings, having the notes and then reviewing the notes at the beginning of the next meeting is really, really, really important. So as you mentioned, like the Monday morning meetings that we used to have at our the first business we worked together at, every week we'd review the notes from the last meeting, and having those items, knowing that they were out there, if it was a to-do that you had to do and it was on there for more than 1 week, it definitely motivated you to wrap up that agenda topic.
Yes. And because, as we've said oftentimes here, and the mother of all learning is repetition, and we got people jumping into these podcasts at different points of entry, could have been the 8th one, 12th one example. People do what you inspect, not what you expect. So having what you just described is, there's a point in time every week where we're going to inspect, and make sure it was done. Now, before I summarize the main points, here's my last one. There's always going to be more work than there is time. There's always going to be more work than there is time. So when you said the meeting was going to be a half hour, it ends at a half hour. If it's really a hot subject, you could ask the group, do I have permission to carry? Does everyone agree to carry this on for at least another 10 minutes? That's the exception, when they all agree and they want to. But otherwise, finish it. If you can't, you got to make, do your darndest to finish it at 30 minutes, or you just stop. There's always going to be more work. These run-ons, you can't do that. Then my 3 main points. We would do, send the meeting, the agenda out ahead of time, and ask for people's input. And make sure you also, Like Dan just had mentioned, include the last meeting's notes. Also highlight the decision points that are going to be made in this upcoming meeting. And if you want them to read anything ahead of time and you put that as attachment, let them know, please read this ahead of time. Come ready to discuss or make a decision. Review the behavioral norms. And if you haven't been having meetings for a while, get ready. You're going to have that. The parking lot is going to be full of stuff. Full of stuff. Well, just keep the parking lot notes, and just, that's one of the first things you're going to review. Did these things get completed? And my last main point, and it's something new that I haven't shared with the group yet. If you get these people who don't show up on time, 2 things. 1, don't reward the wrong behavior and say, well, let me, let's now that Howard has joined us, let's stop, and then Howard, let me bring you up to speed. No. That's Howard's problem. He's got to figure out how to catch up. I can't waste, repeat, take 3 to 5 minutes and summarize what we've covered if Howard came in 10 minutes late. That's not fair to the other group members. Now, the quickest way, Harvey always used to tell us, the quickest way to change people's behaviors is you're getting your back pocketbook. Dan, you probably remember this one too. We'd say if you ran late to coming back from a break or the start of the meeting, you pay $1. And at the end of the meeting, we'll count up the dollars and we'll buy Powerball tickets. And, one of the guiding principles, you can't select the annuity option. You got to take a lump sum, and you can't quit work.
Yeah, we had some other things at one of the companies that I worked with, if your cell phone went off, and actually what they did was it started at $1, and then every violator, it doubled. And so you would go 1, 2, 4, 8, and pretty quickly everything would get cinched off. So people would stop coming back in late. So there were a bunch of things you could be violated if you came back from a break late, or if your cell phone went off, or those kind of things. And then at the end, we actually just we would do a drawing for all the people there, and
beautiful.
One of the persons would get the pot. So
that's a better way
to wrap things up. I think I had the same main points that you had, but I wanted just to add on there as one final note. Find what works for you and your team. We've given you a lot of different options for meetings, and not all of them might work, but take what works for you guys and build it and be consistent. That's really what this all boils down to in the end. Those norms, having that consistency, is what allows people to come to the meetings prepared and know what's going on. And, back when I was a young know-it-all, snot-nosed punk, I rebelled against a lot of these things. And I will tell you that the discipline that I learned definitely served me well at my later positions. And so I will, from a personal standpoint, put my stamp on these things definitely work. So that brings us to the end of our main topic, and we're going to transition into our article for the week. So our article this week I actually took from somebody that we follow on the Valuability Twitter. One of our follows is a gentleman named Mike Kelly. He is a CFP, a Certified Financial Planner in Cincinnati, Ohio. And he wrote this article, 8 Ways Highly Successful People Set and Achieve Goals. And I thought it was like a number of the articles that we have gone through in the past. It's a great complement to the things that we talk about here on our podcast on a regular basis. So I'll just run through the 8 things quickly. Number 1, visualize your ideal future. Number 2, work backwards from your goal. Number 3, hold yourself accountable. Number 4, set clear deadlines. Number 5, write down your goals. Number 6, break your goals down. Number 7, own your future. And number 8, use your goals in every aspect of your life. And that last one, to me, is kind of the key. What we talk about here, the name of the podcast, Valuability, focused on values. When your goals are connected to your values, whether it's business or your personal goals, it has a much stronger motivation, as we talked about in one of the previous episodes, having that lighthouse up there. Sometimes you need to take a step back. Some of the questions underneath bullet point 8 in the article, why are these goals important? How will you achieve them? How will they make a difference? That lines up exactly with what we talk about all the time, that aligning your goals to your values is essentially what those questions are doing, right? It's saying what part of your value system is the reason why this goal is important. Couple of other notes that I had. Number 3, hold yourself accountable. Of course, you want to have self-accountability, but having a coach or an accountability partner is fantastic. It's definitely something that motivates me. I'm a pretty self-motivated person, but I am definitely motivated by having other people expecting things from me. And so for me, having an accountability partner or a coach is a huge plus. And I'll go back to and say, when I was younger, I really pushed back on that. I was I don't need a coach. I'm motivated enough. If I have a goal, I'll hit it. And those things are all definitely true, but what was untrue is that having a coach or an accountability partner didn't help at all. It definitely always helps me. And then second other note on achieving goals is not only writing your goals down, but rewriting them on a regular basis. And this is something you taught me early on, Philip, the Franklin Planner system. I don't use an actual Franklin Planner anymore, but I do use a pad of paper. And every week I sit down and I rewrite my goals, because it cleans things up. I can, check things off and then I remove them from the list the next week. But the process of going through those goals and actually rewriting them every week refocuses me on the things that I need to do and on my tasks. And eventually, sometimes you find you keep rewriting something and you realize, what? I haven't gotten to this task. I need to sit down and decide, is this something that I actually am going to do, or why am I avoiding it? So those were the 2 notes that I had on the article. Your thoughts?
Take number 1. Visualize your ideal future. Create that vision. People without a vision perish. So establish what your vision is. And figure out also, within that vision, what your values are. As you said, Dan, if I know my top 5 values, I align those with my goals. I'm going to therefore make better, align my behaviors and my decision making. So it's going to allow me to sustain optimal performance better. Now, holding yourself accountable. Some of you, we might just have solo practitioners out there. What I do today, and I've been doing it now for a little over a year. I used to have the Ben Franklin system as well. But I just take outlooks and I block out a strategic block of time on Mondays. And I block out a couple hours. And I sit back and I use that as my reflection time, and I reconnect. And I reconnect by looking at my vision. Am I, and I assess my progress to the vision. Am I advancing, or am I treading water? And am I still highly passionate or emotionally connected to it? Then I'm going to review my metrics against the goals, and I'll expect my weekly execution, and I'll have a scorecard there. And I look at my lead and lag indicators, And am I executing at a high level, and is it producing? If not, what are the 1 or 2 things that I must do this week to improve? And if it's the sales process there, I'm looking at, our number of closes, asking someone to buy, then the closing ratio. When you are asking, what's your percentage of closing? If you ask 10 people, you close 5, 50%, you close 7, you got a 70% closing ratio. And then what's my average commission per sale or, consulting agreement? Assess performance breakdowns. Is there a breakdown? What's the root cause? Need to adjust the plan or execute? Complete task, and then I like the, other strategic activities. That's my time to make sure, like professional athletes, they spend 90% of their time actually practicing, 10% by actually performing, and entertainers. Well, I'm making sure I read a book or I take a course. So that's, take that time and you've got to help, self-accountability is the number 1 indicator if someone's going to be successful. So that's that self-discipline. Put it into your into your outlook, a 2-hour block to reflect, make some good deductions, and those new deductions will take you into new discoveries. So with that, I am complete, Dan.
Now, and I will echo that Philip does take that seriously. If I shoot him an email or a text during that time, I get a text back that says, hey, I'm in my planning time. I'll call you back in a bit. And he does not let distractions get into that time. So go back and listen to our episode on the model week, but building in that planning time and that time to review your goals is critical, and then not allowing the day-to-day tasks to overwhelm that is critically important. So that wraps up the article section, and we will move on to the close. If you have topics that you would like us to cover, suggestions on topics, or questions that you would like us to answer on the podcast, reach out to us. Best way to do that is via our Twitter account at value_ability. You can also reach us on our website, value-ability.com. Click on the Contact Us tab, or on our Facebook page, search at ValueAbility, all one word, on Facebook. Wherever you find us, please like, review, subscribe, and share. Next episode 20, as we mentioned, working with educators and serving the community. We'll be talking with David Adler and discussing the topic of education. What tips do you use to keep yourself on track and to meet your goals? Reach out to us and let us know what tips and tricks. If we did not cover one that you use, let us know what tips you are using to keep yourself on track and meeting those goals. Thank you always for listening. Be sure to join us next week, and remember that financial success comes from building a plan on the foundation of your values, and building your ability will help you get there. This is a podcast collaboration, not a peer-reviewed journal or a sponsored publication. We make no representations as to accuracy, completeness, correctness, suitability, or validity of any information in this podcast, and will not be liable for any errors, omissions, or delays in this information, or any losses, injuries, or damages arising from its display or use. All information is provided on an as-is basis. It is the listener's responsibility to verify their own facts. You should be aware of the real risk of loss in following any strategy or investment discussed on this podcast. Strategies or investments discussed may fluctuate in price or value. Investors may get back less than invested. Investments or strategies mentioned on this podcast may not be suitable for you. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You must make an independent decision regarding investments or strategies mentioned on this podcast. Before acting on information on this podcast, you should consider whether it is suitable for your particular circumstances and strongly consider seeking advice from your own financial or investment advisor. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, employer, or company. A assumptions are not reflective of the position of any entity other than the authors, and since we are critically thinking human beings, these views are always subject to change, revision, and rethinking at any time. Please do not hold us to them in perpetuity.